Welcome to the Hyperbolic podcast.
First ever episode.
Hopefully first of many. We've been wanting to do this for a long time now. Excited. Got a lot of bullshit to talk about. So let's get started.
Been preparing for quite a while.
Yeah.
Been planning on doing this for probably about a year. Actually started preparing a couple months ago.
Yeah. And we finally got around to it. Imagine that. I'm Jordan.
I'm Bo. Bodie. I've had to start introducing myself to everybody as Bodie because no one understands my name as Bo. It's too short.
That's weird.
All right. Well, every time I tell somebody we're going to start recording a podcast, they always just say, "What's it going to be about?" And I say, "I don't know."
That's what I get too.
Oh my God.
It's hard to.
Cats crawling all over the table.
It's hard to nail down exactly what we want to do because there's a lot of things we want to cover. We've talked about a lot of historical things, comedy. Comedy's huge.
Comedy, video games.
There's really no end to what we want to talk about. So,
anyway, the podcasts we listen to are very, very different too.
Yeah.
So, don't really have a specific interest, but it's gonna be fun. All right, so it's pretty late.
It's probably 11 or so.
We were with one of our friends. It was later than that. We didn't get there till like 1 because it closes at 10.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I remember. It was like 1 and the door was still unlocked for some reason.
So we went down to because the apartment I live in has a pool and a hot tub. And then the clubhouse, you have to go through the clubhouse to get to the hot tub. And so we were just going to go down into it after a late night of hanging out. And we went and the clubhouse was unlocked, even though it was supposed to close at 10. And then...
this is a late night of drinking, by the way. We were all pretty... under the influence.
Yeah. Well, it makes the story a lot better. But then we get there at like 1, and it's still open. And then we sat in the hot tub for 3 hours just talking about nothing. And then this, little security guard guy, we see him walk past.
I mean, he was skinny. He was really tall and skinny. He had blonde hair. He's probably like 6'4", so he's taller than me.
Well, he's definitely Mormon too.
And he was definitely Mormon. We'll get to that. But he was at least 6'4", and probably one of the most awkward people I've ever had a interaction with.
Mm-hmm.
What made it funny is the guy had a gun on his hip, so the awkwardness.
Oh yeah, and I didn't even notice.
Mixed in together.
I was pretty drunk.
Yeah, well, I remember that. So continue.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So then, well, he keeps circling the area, and then he eventually comes through the clubhouse, and we're like, oh shit, he's gonna get mad. But he just comes out, I was like, you guys know that you're not allowed to be in here past 10 or 11 or whatever. And then we were like, what? How's that possible? We got in here past 11.
He sounded just like a 10-year-old kid.
Oh, yeah, it was weird. He's so awkward, that. Which is weird, too, because I'm sure he has to do it all the time at that job because people are down there past curfew all the time.
Yeah.
So... But he's still so awkward because he's just the nerdiest person of all time.
Yeah. Probably, like I said, 6'4", probably like 140 pounds, just maybe.
Doofy.
Yeah.
And then he's like, all right, guys. And we're like, oh, hey, sorry, man. We didn't even notice. We were just down here. We've been here for hours. We didn't really think we were in here that late. And he just looks at us and goes, crap happens. And we all just bust up. I could not hold it back. I was laughing so hard. But he's like, yeah, but you guys, crap happens, but you guys ought to get out.
Yeah. So funny. And one of the funniest things about the night, too, actually, what I remember is that one of the topics at hand while we were sitting in the hot tub was heavily religious.
Yeah.
So we were talking about religion.
Religion and politics.
Religion and politics and things like, well, just those two things. When we got done and we were headed upstairs, I can't remember how the joke came about, but
well, even in the hot tub, we kept doing the thing.
It's a Catholic thing where they touch their shoulders and
they make the cross.
And
I don't remember why we were talking about that.
I don't either, but we on the way up we just started praising Spytron because that's what we called this guy.
Did you make that up for Tyler?
I think it was me.
Yeah.
I think Tyler said Spytron, but I was the one that kind of leaned into the going. oh, thanks, Spytron.
Yeah.
You know,
Praise me, Spytron. And
send blessings down upon me, Spytron.
And then it was still even like 4:00. We still stayed up for like an hour, just standing in the kitchen,
just laughing about it,
saying crap happens and praise Spytron. Oh, it's Spytron.
Fucking 20-year-old kids, man.
Dude, I have a cut in my. It's like under my tongue.
Speaking of cuts, I literally stabbed myself in the hand about 3 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Setting up for the podcast. That was.
Is it still bleeding?
Let me look. It's pretty deep. Like, it might have been a good idea to go get stitches, but I think I'm all right.
It's so small though. They would give me like 2 stitches.
It was deep though. Like, if I spread my finger out like this, then I can see a hole down into my hand. Yeah. So you remember a couple weeks ago we were doing what we do at work. We took a 15-minute break and went and sat outside with our friends and watched various videos on YouTube. One of which was a very interesting video, wheelchair fencing.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
So,
well, no, okay. The funniest part. How did I find that? I think it was John Boy.
Wheelchair fencing.
Wheelchair
and
fencing.
It's
So I
kind
clicked on it, thinking. Well, I was like, that's cool. I mean, well, it was in the Paralympics.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, so the one I watched was in the Paralympics. They wheel up and they strap their wheelchairs to the ground so they can't. Well, they can't move
Sideways.
Yeah, I was expecting it to be where they could, where they can wheel around, like wheel back and forth, like you do in fencing. Like you can hop back and hop forward. I was definitely thinking it was gonna be like that. But then they roll up and they get clamped down in. And they like measure it. They like stretch out their arms and they like measure how far they can stab. And then, well, then after I watch that, I watch another one. And these dudes are sitting in a wheelchair and they are doing it like they're getting measured, right? And then they battle or whatever. And one guy wins, and they raise his hand, and it's all good. And then they both stand up. Both the guys.
I forgot about that.
Both of the guys stand up out of the chair and like are hugged by their coach.
So I guess it's just that they gotta. Obviously, they have to even the playing field for a sport. They gotta give it nobody an advantage. So there's probably multiple people that enter the Paralympics with various disabilities. You would sign up for wheelchair fencing. It's not disabled fencing,
right?
So. It's not it's, I don't know.
Right. It's just so weird because they make him sit in a wheelchair and like half the time, like one of the guys would, like push off the ground with his leg and like get a little bit more leverage. And they're like, whoa. They like
Is that a penalty or something?
Yeah. They're like, give him a flag or whatever. They hold up a white flag and they're like, oh, whoa. And they make him sit back down and get back in the position.
So I don't have a very firm basis on fencing. I don't understand fencing. Like, I understand the fact that you have to kind of like, I think you have to hit him on the head or like poke him in the chest or something, and you get a point. And I think it just goes off of points. And that's about my understanding. So with that, you look at wheelchair fencing and you're like, why the fuck are these guys fencing? Because they're totally stationary. And
they just lean.
They just lean back, and it's the funniest thing ever. If you've never seen it before, you should go look it up on YouTube right now. But they just lean, and it's like they're doing a dance while sitting on a chair, and they have a sword in their hand trying to poke another guy. And it's so funny. They're like, the distance is far, so like you got one guy that's completely leaned over to the side, like whipping the sword, or what do they call him? And there's a word for it in fencing. The sword, I forget what they call it, but
whatever.
He leans over and he swipes, and it's like a full extension, to the side, and the other guy's leaning back off the other side of his chair to dodge the thing, and it's like hard because he can block it, but you're sideways to the guy.
Yeah.
So like
they're totally sideways. Like in normal fencing, they're kind of sideways because they have the arm behind their back,
but they're able to turn their upper body and face each other like directly.
Yeah.
But they're still turned sideways. So
it's so weird. Why don't they let them move? Like, they literally lock them. So, and the funny thing is, too, when they come in and they're getting measured, they have to, like, do, like, a mock. So, they're sideways, like, shoulders are aligned, right? And so he pokes, like, he stretches his arm out and pokes him in the chest, and then they, like, slide him away so that it barely is touching him. And then right when it's barely touching him, they're like, okay, now put your hand up. And he puts his elbow at a 90-degree angle with the sword straight up in the air. And they're, like, measuring if he can block with his elbow. And then they're like, okay, you can block, so that measurement's good. And they measure a whole bunch of different things. It's so weird. It's so weird. Maybe we should look up more videos about it because it's so funny.
Yeah.
I bet it's so competitive, too. Oh, because that's the video where the guy wins. The one guy wins, and you can see the shot of the guy in that background, like...
Yeah, we'll have to find that video.
You have to find that picture and put it right there.
The most excited I've ever seen anybody ever.
He
period.
Freaks out and stretches his arms out. Oh my gosh, it is the funniest thing.
If my life just completely falls apart, if I can't do anything else in life, I want to coach wheelchair fencing.
Yeah. That's so funny. And people people are like, yeah, well, it's pretty similar to fencing, but it's actually a completely different sport. Not the best fencers aren't necessarily the best wheelchair fencers. It's a different, it's a whole different playing field. You're sitting.
Okay, so let me think back to the medieval times when there were knights in wheelchairs.
Yeah.
Rolling around and fighting battles. When was that?
Yeah.
A thing?
Or just not rolling around.
Oh, that's right. They rode on horses, not wheelchairs.
You know what it is? It's it's when so when they do the, what's it called when they do the guys and the short guys in the front with the shield and their spears are like this, and then they create like the turtle.
I think it's called like a phalanx or
That's
something.
what I thought too.
But I don't know. Like I'm
but
probably
whatever.
wrong.
So what they do is they put the wheelchair guys in the front. So they just are holding a shield in front of their knees, and the guys right behind them push because they can just hold the shield really well. And then at the end of the war, they just have to send out their champion. Each king sends their champion out to sit in a wheelchair and fence. But back then they didn't have the rubber things on the end, so they just chopped head. Yeah, they just chopped your arm off. Can
you imagine like Game of Thrones, the Mountain? Just a massive guy in a huge wheelchair with a giant two-handed sword. And they just roll him out and they set him down, and he just
takes three
swipes
guys.
the sword across, and it cuts. It slices three guys in their wheelchairs completely in half with one swoop.
It takes three guys to push him around. They're like just controlling. No, it takes a horse.
Yeah,
it's like a carrot.
Oh, like a chariot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a chariot. He's just riding through. There you go.
Wait, maybe that's where chariots came from.
Wheelchair fencing. Actually, wheelchair fencing has been around since before chariots. Wheelchair fencing was here before fencing.
Oh, God.
This cut in my mouth is really fucking me up.
Quit complaining.
Okay.
I have a hole in my hand.
That's true. All right, so in preparing for this podcast, we've been, thinking about a couple different. We've been thinking about a couple different kind of topics. What would you call that?
Segments?
Yeah.
Things?
Just a segment.
Topic, maybe, yeah.
Maybe not topic, but segment's definitely the right word. I think one of the best ones, and this is so good because this one actually, I mean, it is like this most of the time, but we actually thought of this one. This is pretty unique. I don't think I've ever
heard of, like, I've seen
YouTube channels, maybe
YouTube videos where people bring up like this topic and like a question thing. They just like they ask a celebrity if this happened. How many?
Well, it's more like this versus this.
Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of like Deadliest Warrior.
Deadliest Warrior, or like something you would see at 10 p.m. on Animal Channel.
Yeah.
What is that called? Discovery Channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something weird, but this one's really good because I think it's really unique, and we put a lot of thought into it, and
it's definitely right up our alley because we way overthink things that don't need to be thought about at all. So
that's a good point. All right, so the new segment is called Us Versus. So pretty much, whenever we do this segment, we're gonna think of something that we have to beat, or just a situation, and see how we would fare.
Right, and the whole idea, the whole concept is that we want to make sure that everything is as even as possible, you know, because that's the thing we look for and thrive for is competition and the thrill of the fight or the thrill of whatever it's you're doing, you know.
Right. Well, it's,
So-
it's like a game.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just-
like a
yeah.
game, and you don't want to just obviously if
Just
you
a big
you go
hypothetical.
watch baseball and one team just scores 20 runs and mercy rules the other team. That's not fun to watch. So
Yeah.
that's
So we want to make it as hard as possible.
right.
All right. So the
But
main
also
one,
still feasible.
probably the first one that I've ever heard that's kind of this like hypothetical thing, was the children. It's you versus 100 children. It started out like that. It was just you versus 100 children